ER became an instant hit, partly due to its use of complicated medical terminology.
In the past, medical series were sprinkled with medicine after the show was written, and often the American Medical Association would read it. John Wells said, no.
We didn't talk down to the audience at all. The physicians spoke to each other in the way that physicians really speak to each other, using the language that they really use.
Willison in room 4 needs a CBC. Man in 5 is a rule-out MI waiting for cardiac enzymes, and another 12 needs a...
This is going to be from the doctor's perspective, and if people don't understand every word, so be it. It's going to feel real, just like you really are in the ER.
When you first started doing it, all the CBCs and Chem 7s and all that stuff seemed foreign, and then you do it over and over again. And so it was really about repetition with dialogue.
Well, Eric Sell in the pilot episode had a very long, we called him bullet, very long monologue of medicalese that he had to do. And it took him 22 takes to get it. So the next week or whatever, I got one, and I thought, there's no way I'm gonna do this in 22 takes. So I learned it so intensely that 20 some odd years later, I still remember it.
65-year-old male with severe peripheral vascular disease manifested by claudication of the left calf.
10 days post-op for Mercy General after having an aorta bifemoral bypass. Normal post-operative course until about 6 hours ago when he began to experience the gradual onset of lower left quadrant pain without palliative or provoking factors. This radiograph would shows fluid in the patient's right costophrenic sulcus.
We were saying this stuff and learning medicine on the fly, but because we had, and that was it, you have to keep it real.
What also made the show unique was its visual style.
A lot of the credit for the style and look of the show has to be given to Rod Holcomb, who directed the pilot. I think the look and feel of the show is really his touch.
And we would do these incredible scenes because we had a Steadicam, which allowed you didn't need track and a dolly with a camera. The camera was on the guy's chest, and he just would walk backwards, and it looked smooth because of the way the Steadicam was developed.
It's a picture and picture and picture.
In my opinion, the Steadicam, under Rod's direction, brought an emergency feeling even when doctors were just talking about their personal lives. There was still a feeling of hustle and rushing and trying to get from story point A to story point B.
The Steadicam had just been started to being used. It was a few years old, had been used very effectively, but it was thought of as a motion picture tool, and one that people wouldn't be able to use as well in television.
What's cool is that it doesn't look that much different than any other show, except if you watch and go, wait a second, there's not been a cut.
We linked many scenes in one shot. We called them oneers. We'd often do 6-page scenes in one shot, and it was on the last guy, last line to not screw it up.
It's a lot of work, and it was a lot of pressure on everyone. And it was a lot of pressure on the actors, but I think that was like, we were all super macho, about learning our lines, and we know everything, and we loved it.
Coming up next,
My co-stars were surprised that I wanted to leave.
the pressures of fame become too much for Sherry Stringfield.
That was hard. I was sorry to see her go.
That plus more when the story behind ER returns. Back to the story behind ER. After debuting to stellar ratings, NBC had a bona fide hit medical drama, and viewers had a standing Thursday night appointment at the ER.
If you're gonna work here for me, this cowboy crap has gotta stop.
Stay here and work for you. That's an attractive prospect.
You never know what's going to really hit the consciousness of the audience. And what we were doing on a weekly basis and consistently knocking it out of the park, it was pretty extraordinary.
In addition to the audience embracing it, the critics did as well. More Emmy nominations than any other drama on television.
In total, the show took home 23 Emmy Awards and launched these fairly unknown actors from obscurity to full-fledged stardom.
The cast exploded, they all became famous.
The actor shot to stardom pretty much overnight.
We premiered ER in late September, and by the end of October, we were on the cover of Newsweek magazine.
That was the moment. This guy came up to me with the cover of Newsweek magazine, and I thought it was one of those joke covers, and I actually said, oh, that's funny, I gotta get one of those. And he said, well, right over there. And I looked at the news kiosk, and they were plastered all over this news kiosk.
When I saw the cover of Newsweek, hilarious. Thank God I was so young and stupid. I was like, oh, wow, my mom's gonna love that.
Back on set, the cast put fame aside and focused on making the best show possible.
Very early on, George called us all into his trailer and said, right, this is the show that's going to do it differently. We're all going to be nice to everybody. And we're not going to lock ourselves in our trailers, and we're not going to throw diva fits. We're going to show up on time. We're going to show up prepared. We're going to have a lot of fun. Everybody good with that? And we all went, yeah, we have a great time. Yeah.
We had a great time on the show.
It was really, truly like a family.
We just shared humor and a work ethic. ER was not a cushy job.
I used to kind of refer to Stage 11 as the submarine because we'd kind of go in Monday and come out Friday. And we'd do so much there, and then we'd do a couple of days kind of outside on the back lot.
The best way to get through a 14-hour workday is to have a sense of humor.
What sort of started to grow immediately was there was sort of a culture of practical jokes and humor and laughing.
He ain't gonna make it. George was always, pulling practical jokes.
We'd put like the goo, like that you use for things on like handles. Like George used to put it on my trailer door, so you go, "Whoa."
You're dealing with, in your imaginative state, really heavy stuff and kids dying and as a result, you can't help but want to laugh and want to have something to contrast. And we did that a lot. We laughed a lot, and it was definitely what carried us through.
Starring in the network darling of dramas may seem like a job you'd have to be pushed out of. But after just 2 seasons, Sherry Stringfield decided it was time to check out of the ER.
There's not one thing that prompted me to leave ER. It was the whole experience and looking down the road of knowing who I am.
Being in that fishbowl, that's part of the price of fame. And I think that adjustment was a lot more difficult for Sherry.
It was making me nervous. I was like nervous all the time.
It was very surprising that Sherry wanted to leave the series. And I know her agents and everybody at the studio tried to talk her through this and to convince her not to leave ER.
My co-stars were surprised that I wanted to leave.
That was hard. I had a big crush on Sherry. I was sorry to see her go.
It didn't feel weird for me to leave, but it was certainly perceived that way. I was really vilified and told I couldn't work. Oh, you'll never work again? Really?
I was sad when she left because I knew that those characters were going to be spending a lot of time playing with each other, and I loved working with her.
The next high-profile exit came in 1999, when George Clooney announced he would be leaving the show to focus on his film career.
Losing George was big. America fell in love with George Clooney on ER.
George stayed very grounded on set as his career took off, and he worked really hard at that. George never asked for a pay increase when he left in the 5th year of the series. He was making exactly what he made the first year of the series.
I have to go, Cal. I can't stay here.
George worked so hard. I mean, I've never seen a person work that hard, and I mean literally kind of every day. I mean, he came and, was really committed to the show, and then at the same time was running off and doing movies at the same time, and it was kind of wild to watch.
After 8 seasons, Dr. Green became the only original character to die after a battle with brain cancer.
He was central enough character. It would be a little bit difficult for him to wander off to another hospital. It was 8 years, and it was a family decision. No regrets, and I'm so glad. And I knew, of course, the show wouldn't be hurt by me leaving or anybody leaving, because it really was a combination of very talented people in a lot of different places that, because they all worked together so well, it created something bigger.
Noah Wiley's Dr. John Carter became the longest-running character on the show.
I remember basically, at one of those pivotal moments when you either renegotiate a contract or you make an exit, thought to myself, well, where would you go? What would you want that you're not getting here? Where is there better work to be had? And so I just kept staying.
Eventually, all of the original 6 hung up their scrubs or lessened their screen time. But despite losing their beloved doctors, the fans still tuned in.
They became extremely invested in the old characters and the new characters, and they didn't let go for 15 seasons.
I was amazed that people stuck with it. I was delighted, but I was amazed.
When we return,
it's a legacy that all of us can be proud of forever.
The lasting impact of ER.
It set the stage for all medical series that came after.
Stay with us. The story behind ER will be right back. Behind ER. What started as a network gamble became one of the most celebrated shows in history. And after 15 seasons, ER said goodbye and forever changed television.
The best decision, I think, I made two good decisions on the show. The one decision was not to direct ER as a film and let my company take it and make it a television series. And the second best decision I ever made was hiring John Wells. After that, there was not much for me to do.
ER will always be one of the great highlights of my career and of my life. You know, it's like having a great job where you feel like you were doing something that made a little bit of a difference. And you look back on those times as good times.
My favorite moments really were going and working, being on that stage with that group of people, walking into that stage 11 and looking at this thing going, wow, how are we going to get through this day?
Something happens on a show like ER among the script and the directing and the actors and the time in history where something magical happens. And it doesn't happen very often. And it happened big time in ER.
It was extraordinary, you know. It really changed the face of television. And I think qualitatively, between the writing and acting, I think it's as good as any show in history.
It set the stage for all medical series that came after.
In a word, life-changing. It gave me a career.
You know, I'm extremely grateful. This was the job that changed my life completely. Gave me some of the warmest and most rewarding friendships I've had.
We'll be hard-pressed to ever see in broadcast television that level of performance and that level of quality ever again.
That wraps up the story behind ER. For more about all your favorite shows and stars, go to poptv.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.